Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I don't know what it's like where you are, but for the last 3 days it has been very cold where I live, and it's June. I'm here wearing a t-shirt and a sweatshirt, and yeah, it's bizarre. But anyway, I'm here today to do the Amplify Voices tag. This was started by Jenny Johnston. I will link her video down below. I was not tagged by anybody to do this, but I wanted to make sure I did it because with everything going on, I think it is important to continue conversations and to say things. I struggle a little bit because I don't necessarily feel that I have much of a right to speak out as a white man in America. I tend to feel like I'm part of the problem, and I worry because I don't have answers, and I'm very much in a process of learning and trying to take in things. So I always worry that I'm going to say the wrong thing or not be helpful. But I do think it is important to have conversations and talk. So the idea behind this tag is to amplify a black voice and talk about it, and I will be doing that. One thing I've been doing a lot of since everything happened is I've been trying to listen and examine. I followed the Publishing Paid Me hashtag. I've just followed news and a lot of the terrible things that have been happening to protesters, and feeling very sad about the country where I live, because for a while it was tempting to think that we were better than this, and there has always been a problem. I'm not naive enough to think that there was not a problem even when it seemed okay, but it felt like we were making progress, and I guess maybe I allowed myself to fall into that trap where you think things are really getting better, and then reality can be harsh, but it's important to pay attention to reality in order to learn and try to do better. So I do want to briefly mention that two of the videos about Booktube in particular that helped me were a video from Bookish Realm called I Don't Trust You, I Don't Want Your Sympathy, and I Don't Believe You, 6 years as a black booktuber. I will link that video down below. And another one from Seiji, who is the artisan geek, called The Problem with Booktube. I will link that one down below as well. Because I think it is important to interrogate your own experience and the communities in which you live. And I've been on Booktube about 1.5 years, and I've had a very positive experience. My channel has done surprisingly well. I didn't really anticipate that it would grow as quickly as it has, that I would get the feedback that I have, and that there would be so much positive response. I haven't gotten a whole lot of negative feedback either, but I'm always, or at least I always try to be conscious of the fact that my experience does not match other people's experiences. You know, I am a white male, conventionally attractive. I am gay, but I have been told many times in my life, you don't seem gay, which I admit when I was younger, I took pride in, and I am not proud of the fact that I once thought that was a compliment. So I feel like it's important for me to remember that my experience is not what everybody experiences, and I have to be aware of what other people experience within the Booktube community and outside of it, because it's really important not to perpetuate some of the things that are done to them, and just try to do my part to do better, to protect the whole community and all the voices that are in it, because I'm one of those people who believes that diversity is a strength. The fact that we are all different is actually a good thing, and we need those voices. We don't want to turn them away, and we want them to remain active in the community. So that's kind of, I don't know. I feel like nothing I say is quite enough in circumstances like these, and I certainly can't fix what has been done on my own, but I think it is important to listen to their stories and try to make this community more open, more accepting, and keep them around, because they make this a better place. And it's so important to keep listening, keep learning, and keep trying to do better. So Really quickly, because I selected a passage from something a little more specific. It is also Pride Month, and if you saw my June TBR, I decided to scrap the original TBR I had for Pride Month, which would obviously focus on LGBTQ authors, and focus on queer Black authors, and that is kind of the passage. The passage that I chose is going to reflect that, but I feel like I should talk about two other authors really quickly. Two books by Toni Morrison. These were the second and third books by Toni Morrison that I read, but I think they also were very foundational in my understanding of race in America and racism. And I didn't pick a single passage because I want to encourage you to read the whole thing, the whole book, and really take in, like, absorb what she is saying, because she says so much and it's all important. I didn't want to choose a single passage. The Bluest Eye is about a girl who is young and Black and prays to have blue eyes because she thinks if she had blue eyes she would conform to a conventional stereotype of beauty, and then everything would be better. It is such a good book. And then Song of Solomon is very much about the trauma that has happened to Black people in this country and how it has passed through generations, and it's about there's so much good about this book, and I think you should definitely try to take it in. So to get through the logistics of the prompt of the tag, here's the purpose. Step 1, select an essay, poem, novel, excerpt, or speech by a person of color or from a marginalized voice. Tell us about the author. Tell us why you chose this piece, read the piece, and tag some white booktubers. So, like I said, I am trying to, within my realm of this conversation, whatever that even is, I'm trying to spend a lot of time focusing on Black queer voices, because it is Pride Month, and I think they are voices that tend to be drowned out and should be focused on. The larger gay rights movement was started by queer people of color and queer trans people, and they were very much left behind by the rest of the movement. So I think it is important, especially in circumstances like this, to remember to try to lift them up and lift up their voices and their experiences and make sure they are part of the conversation, because they absolutely deserve to be. So I have chosen a passage from the Stonewall Reader. I've talked about this a lot recently. So this was done by the New York Public Library last year. It is a collection of essays, interviews, articles, and excerpts from larger pieces of writing all about the gay experience leading up to Stonewall, experiences during Stonewall, and gay experience after Stonewall. And I chose this because it has two interviews in it that kind of speak to what I would like to focus on. There's an interview with Sylvia Rivera, and there's an interview with Marsha P. Johnson. I will link both of their Wikipedia pages down below. If you are unfamiliar with them, please get to know them and their voices. They were trans people of color who were very active in the gay rights movement, and I think they are starting to finally get their due and be recognized a lot by the gay community. But for a long time, they really struggled to be heard, and I hope that people are hearing them now. Sylvia Rivera was Latina, and Marsha P. Johnson was Black. And I wanted to focus on them in particular because after Stonewall, they tried to start an organization called the Star House, and STAR stands for Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. And I didn't pick a section from Martha P. Johnson's interview, which comes later in the book, which is much more about what they were trying to accomplish with STAR, which again stood for Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. Of course, these being interviews from the past, they tend to use the term transsexual or transvestite instead of transgender or anything that would be more modern, but it is reflective of the time. And one of the things I found interesting, Sylvia Rivera's interview came earlier in the book, and yet it seemed to be a lot more reflective, like a looking back kind of point of view. And it was interesting because in many sections when you have, say, a white person talking about what Stonewall was and before the riot, they'll mention that drag queens would be there all the time. But when Sylvia Rivera's section, Sylvia pushes back on that and says, no, drag queens weren't welcome in the Stonewall. And it's so interesting to hear the different perspectives where, say, a white person's like, oh yeah, they were totally welcome, but you hear somebody who's actually part of that community saying, no, we were not welcome there, and in fact, many of us felt uncomfortable being there. But the section I wanted to share was about the Star House. So basically, Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson teamed up to try to get transgender youth off the street, get them off drugs, help bail them out when they were arrested, because they were always arrested. They were much easier targets for the police than other members of the community, and tended to be treated much more harshly by the police than other members of the community. So their purpose with Star was to save these members of the community like them and give them a place to go, give them support and help them. And it didn't work out because they couldn't get anyone to help them with it. And that's why I chose this passage from Sylvia Rivera. Asked by the interviewer, what were you trying to do? What were your hopes? Rivera responds, Marsha and I fought for the liberation of our people. We did a lot back then. We did sleep in the streets. Marsha and I had a building on 2nd Street, which we called Star House. When we asked the community to help us, tears coming down face, there was nobody to help us. We were nothing. We were nothing. We were taking care of kids that were younger than us. Marsha and I were young, and we were taking care of them. And GAA had teachers and lawyers, and all we asked was to help us teach our own so we could all become a little bit better. There was nobody there to help us. They left us hanging. There was only one person that came and helped us. Bob Kohler was there. He helped paint. He helped us put wires together. We didn't know what we were doing. We took a slum building. But we tried. We really did. We tried. Marsha and I and a few of the other older drag queens, we kept it going for about a year or two. We went out and made that money off the streets to keep these kids off the streets. We already went through it. We wanted to protect them, to show them that there was a better life. You can't throw people out on the street. Interviewer, who were these young kids? Where did they come from? Sylvia Rivera, from everywhere. We had kids from Boston, California, everywhere. Interviewer, where were their families? Sylvia, I guess at home. They were good kids. I've seen a couple of them after the movement. The ones that I've seen, they've done very well. It makes you feel good. It does. Interviewer, things didn't turn out as you had hoped. Sylvia, well, you figure it's always going to happen. Every time I see the commercial for the Covenant House, I say, I would love to have had that. I would love to have seen a Star House. These kids already knew. You always get that feeling. You're different. We just didn't have the money. The community was not going to help us. Interviewer, were they embarrassed by you? Sylvia, the community is always embarrassed by the drag queens. And that is why I wanted to share that, because we need to do better, and we need to make sure that we are keeping trans voices and queer black voices, queer voices of color in the conversation. We need to remember, we need to do better for them, because so much of the gay rights movement was built on their backs. They were the ones who had more to lose than the white people who had jobs, and we need to do better. So I'm also going to put a link to an organization that I just learned about called the Emergency Release Fund. I'll put the link down below, but it's emergencyreleasefund.com. It's kind of similar to bail funds that you've seen shared, but they specifically do bail funds for transgender people who are in prison and who are historically imprisoned much more than other people and are treated very badly in prisons. And I hope you take a look, and I hope you will be willing to support them if you can. And that, I think, about covers this tag. Like I said, I don't think I have the answers. I don't know that I don't even know that I can really be helpful, but I can try in my way, and I hope you will too. And with that, thank you for your time watching this video. Thank you for doing whatever listening you have been doing, and for whatever activism you have done in whatever form, because activism takes a lot of different forms. It's not getting out in the streets is important, but there are a lot of other ways to be an activist as well, and I hope you are trying to find a way that fits you and your life. And I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.